What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the LA Soccer Hub Show. My name is Gio Garcia. This week is El Tráfico week. It's a big week. It always lives up to the moment. These games doesn't matter what form you're in. It doesn't matter what you ate that week. It doesn't matter how you're coming into this week because it just all that matters is Saturday and who's hungrier and who wants it more. So you got LAFC versus LA Galaxy this Saturday at BMO Stadium. And here to help me talk about all that, we got Justin Ruderman. Justin, how you doing?
Doing well, man. El Trafico week is always fun. The banter has already started. Billy Sharp, I believe, started it immediately after the game, right? He said, "Yeah, the lads have told me it's a little hostile, and I'm ready. I'm excited for it." So, yeah, getting ready already. It's going to be an exciting one, and I just have this feeling, that this is a big one. And it kind of feels weird to say that when LAFC is kind of at the top of the Western Conference and Galaxy is closer to the bottom. But it doesn't feel that way because Galaxy are the ones in good form and LAFC are the ones in bad form, right? So it kind of seems like they're meeting in the middle, and it's obviously a very, very big game for both teams in terms of the playoff race. So this feels like it's going to be a really, really big and exciting El Trafico.
Yeah, no, it is, and especially we saw what Ricky did last time. You know
Hmm.
what he did last time against LAFC at the Rose Bowl. The last matchup was just insane. Obviously, it was historical by the attendance, over 82,000 fans that attended that match, and just that the rivalry just keeps on growing. Obviously, you got new characters into the fold, like you just mentioned, Billy Sharp, who just joined the LA Galaxy. He's going to be interested. But we should talk about a little. Let's talk a little bit about the LAFC side because LAFC's third straight game that they've had a loss. They're not looking good. Like I just mentioned, it form doesn't matter, but LAFC in the grand scheme of things is starting to go. They're downtrending, and then it's not something you expect. And yeah, they're third, but it doesn't feel like they're as dominant as they were to start the year. Let's talk about this Portland matchup. They ended up losing 2-0. A Portland team who just recently sacked their head coach, Gio Savarese. They're looking different, obviously, but no one expected them to. I wouldn't expect them to win necessarily because it's a big matchup, but you didn't expect them to lose 2-0. What are your thoughts on this game? What'd you take?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those where it's always tough to go into Portland and play this type of game, but you kind of expected LAFC to go in and at least get a point. They really needed 3 points from this game in the way that the Western Conference is shaking out if they want to go and chase St. Louis because it's getting that difficult. Obviously, the game in a couple of weeks against St. Louis will probably decide if they really have a shot at that. But right now, it's more you got to keep what you got, right? You got to fend off the people behind you at this point, and that is difficult when you're not picking up points against teams who are not in the playoff picture at the moment, and that is what Portland is, right? Especially when you look ahead at their next 5 games. We talk about, Galaxy is by far the lowest in the standings of those next 5 games, and that doesn't matter in El Trafico. So it doesn't get easier from here for LAFC, which is I think the main point when you're looking at this type of game. And they quite frankly didn't perform on the day. They couldn't really create very much. Portland basically said, "Here, LAFC, you can have the ball. What are you going to do with it?" And LAFC didn't have an answer. The first shot on goal, I believe, came from Kellen Costa in the 60th minute for LAFC. So it just wasn't very creative. There wasn't a ton of chances. Mario wasn't really involved the entire game. I don't think he had a single shot on target or shot at all, maybe. Throughout the match. So you obviously want to see him get more involved, but without Bawonga, without these other things, there were some problems. Mateusz Bogusz was played out on the wing. He was asked to come more inside, drop underneath, play as a midfielder almost from the wing coming in and try and create, but that doesn't really work when he's out on the wing and he is a true midfielder, but that's limited because of the options that you don't have. 3 wingers in Boanga, Stipe, and Kike Oliveira out on international duty. So it kind of forced Shrundle's hand a little bit there. Didn't really work out. So I think just a lot of problems, and I think maybe one more problem that we can dive into a little bit more if you want to, Gio.
Yeah, I mean, I think also just looking at this, I mean, Portland's 11th in the MLS West standings. Even without those players, even being third team up top, you should have a better performance. It's not, and I think one of the big things is also too the goalkeeper position for LAFC is John McCarthy back to back games where a goal. he should have stopped, or and it gets by him. And it's the second game in a row. He had one against Miami, which I think that first goal he should have done a better job. Positioning wasn't there. The second game now, back-to-back games. I think it may be a very, very a big time decision to look forward and potentially make a goalkeeper change, because it's not looking good. Those type of mistakes shouldn't happen this point in the season for a keeper like of John McCarthy, who has that experience.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. And the thing here, it's the problem to me because I think what we all knew, the big leg up that Crepeau has on McCarthy is playing with the ball at his feet, right? He's a much better passer of the ball when you look at that statistically. McCarthy has about 63%, and Crepeau's more at 67%, right? So it's a considerable difference there in terms of that. But even the long ball percentage, 41 to 36%, a big difference there in terms of the distribution that Crepeau can send out. And I wrote about this in my article from yesterday or 2 days ago now, the game, because it's you know those type of things. And really, the calling card for McCarthy has always been, well, he's a good shot stopper, right? And I think that comes from him being a penalty specialist. We know that. We saw that in MLS Cup. That's how he kind of got his name recognition, right? And very, deservedly so. It was an incredible performance. But his save percentage is also dropping now, and it's at about 68%, which is below what Crepeau was at. So it's tough to see, because it's like he to me was very good in the beginning of the season, shot stopping wise. His numbers were up there with some of the best in the league, and it's been dropping as of recently to a point where you're not any better than Crepeau and potentially worse than Crepeau in shot stopping. So if you can't make up the drop off that you have in terms of the ball with your feet, it's time to make that playoff change. And the reason I say it's a playoff change is because that is coming up right soon, and we know from time with Bob Bradley and any other soccer that you've watched, if you watch any others besides LAFC, is changing back and forth between your goalkeepers is not helpful, and you need to make that change as soon as possible, because you don't want to make that change in the first playoff game or decision day, or right up until playoffs, because you want Crepeau to have as much confidence and flow and form that he can build before the really big games coming up. And that's already upon us, really. The big games are. So it's, to me, that change needs to be made as soon as possible. But I question whether Shrundalo really is going to make it, because to me, I have been saying for probably a month that this needs to be done, because of what I just said. It needs to happen ahead of time rather than when we got to this point now, where it's like it's a very urgent thing now, which is why we have to talk about it.
Yeah. Also, too, like we're just like what, like a month away from the well, give it another month, a month away from the playoffs starting, right
Mm-hmm.
towards the end of October. And I think also when you look at right, if you're gonna make the switch, it's rather sooner than later, so you can give Crepeau at least a month, month worth of games. Obviously, it may be a little difficult ahead of the LAFC, LA Galaxy, El Tráfico, but I think when you look at John McCarthy, there's no way he should be committing the same mistake twice in back-to-back games. And I think that's where it gets sticky for McCarthy. That's where there's going to be pressure for Steve Cherundolo, because there's no way this could happen a third time. And if there's any game that could happen a third time, it's going to be El Tráfico, because anything can happen in those games. The emotion, anything like that. And if you're a goalkeeper and you're John McCarthy, you will have to know that that's in the back of your mind. Like, you've already had two mistakes like this, and another little situation can happen again. A mistake like this is very repetitive if it's not assessed at the coaching, or he's benched or whatever. But I don't know if from what I've seen from Sharundalo this past year with some of his coaching decisions, I don't know if we'll see it this game. But I think I would agree with you. It has to be made. Like Max Rapo has to come in and be the starting goalkeeper to see where he's at, right? Because there's been too many mistakes from John McCarthy that you didn't expect were going to happen, and I think now is the time to look at and be like, okay, Maxime Crepeau, we've seen what he's done in the past for LAFC. Now you got to see what if he can take the team all the way, or as far as this team is going to take him. Because there's going to be times that your goalkeeper is going to have to keep you in a game. There's going to be times where a goalkeeper is going to have to be the man of the match, right? There's just going to be half the times. And for a lot of times that happened for LAFC last season, that happened for LAFC at the start of this year. But when it's getting this weird situation where the team is not flowing, and these mistakes are happening, you need to have a some of an internal change for LAFC. Excuse me.
Yeah, and we the Miami one to me is like he might have thought Long was going to block it, and he made a great save on Messi, and then the Portland one was embarrassing. But I try and look through the individual mistakes and into the stats, which is why I brought them out earlier, because it's just when you see those glaring mistakes, it's easy to say make the switch. But when the stats back up what your eyes are telling you, that's when you know that it's really time to make that change, right? Because well, not only do I believe it in what I'm watching, but also the stats are telling me that probably it's better with the other guy in there. And it's an interesting one, not to throw another twist in the tail, but both of these guys are out of contract at the end of the season. And I don't think that Maxime Crepeau wants to stick around LAFC should he not be the starter, right? John McCarthy may be a little bit more willing, but now he's seen that starter light, and maybe another team will give him that starting spot. So it might affect LAFC beyond just this season, this type of decision.
Yeah, and I think yeah. I mean, you got to see who you're gonna want to keep, right? And if you think Maxine Campo could potentially be your guy, because you got two keepers that want to be the starter. Definitely Maxine Campo does not want to be on the sideline, and maybe this is the extra push that maybe you know tips it over for Maxine Campo moving forward. But we'll see what happens. I definitely think the switch needs to happen a lot sooner than later. Another thing, let's talk about LAFC. Obviously, you talked about all the international players called up. I still think we didn't see obviously Carlos Vela and Danny Buanga. Obviously, we don't know how the relationship is. I think the last time we saw was just like the viral clip that went viral of him being upset. Obviously, the offense isn't flowing. They weren't able to score this game. Last game, they just scored off of like 90th minute, extra time, corner kick. I think Ryan Hollingshead was the one that scored it. But it wasn't from any of the top three forwards. And it's not flowing. And I think that there's questions to be dealt there. Like Mario Gonzalez, it's not looking good. He's not looking like the number 9 everybody expected him to be. I still say you got to give him more time, unfortunately, but he doesn't have more time. LFC don't have more time. It's one of those things, right? So you need, and right now, like I mentioned, Carlos Vela and Danny Buanga, you got to see how that is, because when you don't pass the player the ball right there when he has an opportunity to score, a clear chance of scoring goal. Right, I kind of wonder where that is, and I just feel like LAFC is just not flowing right now. A lot of different things aren't going the way. They aren't getting the results. The offense is not looking good. Vela's not scoring goals. Danny Buanga is not scoring goals. It's all out of frustration. And going to El Tráfico, right? Form doesn't matter, but also relationships do matter. If these players aren't flowing and anything like that, LA Galaxy may have a really, really solid chance of being LAFC at BMO Stadium this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it at the top. It's LAFC are not in good form, right? They've lost. I mean, the turning point in the season we can go back to was this game right here,
Yeah,
the CONCACAF Champions League final, right? That's what it was. It was before that game, LAFC had lost 3 of their 20 matches in all competitions. Since that final, 11 of 20 in all competitions they've lost. That is the difference in this. And it's interesting to me because, I asked Steve Cherundolo this at the time after that game in preparation for returning to MLS play. I said, how do you, rejuvenate this team, make sure that loss doesn't hit you mentally? How do you give them a pep talk? Do you do anything in the locker room? What's the approach? And he said, no, I don't think anything needs to be done. And he said, you can come back to me later if it seemed like maybe there should have been something done. Well, I think there should have been something done because it seemed like the team in the long term took a hit from that. And you can blame injuries and these things and that, but I think that it's very obvious what has happened throughout this season, and that was a very, very tough loss for this team to take, something that they hadn't felt under Cherundolo. They had seen unprecedented success. They had won the Supporters' Shield. They had won MLS Cup. They had qualified, obviously, for Champions League. They had accomplished everything that they wanted to accomplish up until that point under Cherundolo. That was the first real negative. Then, of course, now they've been knocked out of Leagues Cup in a very tough way and things like that. Now it's in a very tough playoff race. So The real tough part is this last end of the season, going into playoffs, and questions need to be answered because LAFC do not have silverware this season. They have another shot in Campeones Cup, and that's going to be the big shot. But other than that, you got to go and win, make MLS Cup to even get a Western Conference trophy, right? So it's going to be interesting, and making the CONCACAF Champions Cup is obviously still a motivation, but you need to finish top two. You need to win the West probably to do that, actually, because the East is so much better this season. So it's just going to be very, very tough throughout the rest of the season, but that's what makes it exciting for us as people who are going to cover it and commentate on it. Is, well, there's always going to be talking points, because either you're going to rise up to the occasion and win those games and get the points that you need, or it's going to be the other side of that coin.
Yeah, and look, if you look at LAFC's schedule, they only have 7 games left. The next 3 are very, very tough games. I mentioned El Tráfico this Saturday. You got St. Louis next weekend, and the following weekend after that, you got Philadelphia. So three games
And
that if they
and then
if they don't go their way, the standings are close too.
and then you got Campeones Cup, and then Real Salt Lake, which is, so the next 5 are really, in my opinion, the toughest stretch of 5 games this all season for LAFC in all competitions. And 4 of those are huge games in terms of MLS and the playoff picture, especially those games against St. Louis and RSL, who are direct rivals for where you're going to place in that Western Conference. So I think this is a decisive stretch. This is a season-defining stretch for LAFC.
Yeah, look, it could also be one of these things. It's very, very, very a long season in terms of just like the travel and all these different things. I'm not going to make any excuse to them. They should be playing way better. They should have won these games. And I think games like Leon, games like the Inter Miami, like games where they just look defeated, which we've never really seen them look like that. I think games like that, you see the real frustration, right? Like Carlos Vela not getting the pass. There's just certain things that's happened this season that you didn't expect, that you expect them to play better. And like to see him get dominant against Inter Miami, to see him get dominant against Club Leon and just different things like that. You expected them like, oh, you can get beat, but when you get dominated like that, you look at the team a little bit different, right? Because you expected more out of them. They have a lot of talent. There's certain maybe decisions, maybe Sharona could have done better and move different pieces. And I just feel like just this type of season and with this stretch coming up, we may see them. We may see them potentially fall off. We may see them. Obviously, you and I would like to see them go as far as they can, but when the team is not flowing and there's just too many questions and the main players aren't flowing, like I mentioned earlier, like Carlos Vela and Danny Buanga, and everything's just not going the way, we may see this team completely fall apart. And I wouldn't be surprised if that were to happen, because there's just too many things that just shouldn't happen at this level of a team. And I think you're going to start, when you have these big players and these big names, and when things don't start going, you start to see people's egos and personality come out a lot more. Because when you're winning, it's easy. When you're winning, you're not going to really critique or anything like that. But when you're losing, those big personalities are going to come out.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's going to be interesting because Sergio Palencia was talking about this actually in his post-game presser. He said, I've been in teams where you lose, a couple games in a row and players start pointing fingers at whoever made the mistake, this and that. He said LAFC's locker room is not like that, but
Couple more games and they'll get there. A couple more games.
That's what I'm saying, because if what you're saying happens, right? If LAFC really can't find the points in these next few games, they don't stay in 3rd place. They go drop 6th, 7th, 8th place. That is going to start dropping crisis into the LAFC fan base, and that is not going to be good. That is what they want to avoid at all costs. And obviously they want home field in playoffs, right? Top 4 is very important, and the higher you can get, the better, because LAFC is that home field is one of the biggest in MLS at BMO Stadium.
Yeah, no, that's gonna be very important. Let's talk about this Galaxy side a little bit. Coming in, like I mentioned, they won the last El Tráfico. Exciting matchup. Look, the final Tráfico of the year. Yeah, the final Tráfico of the year this season. Look, they last 2 games they've tied. They tied obviously last night against St. Louis at home. They tied against Houston a couple weeks ago, and then obviously they beat San Jose in San Jose. And also they haven't lost in their last 4 games. They haven't lost in the last four games, which is pretty good for them. They're in 13th place. Obviously, they need to keep winning in order to obviously move up in the standings. They got 30 points. They're what 4 points away from ninth place. Or is it eight teams make it? Nine teams make it?
Nine. Well, the
Nine.
eighth and ninth have the playoff, right? The
Okay.
you know
We'll say like they're 4 points away from making the playoffs, right? That's not far. That's not. I mean, there's 2 games away from them potentially being in the playoffs in the mix.
right.
This LA Galaxy team is flowing. They got new players. They made some adjustments that have been very impressive. They got Barrios, they got Fagundes, they got Billy Sharp. Players are actually helping them out and looking like a better team to finish out this year. What are your thoughts on the LA Galaxy coming to El Tráfico?
Yeah, no, I think I'm not sure exactly what the injury updates will be on Jalen Neal and Caligari. I think it's going to be tough for them with those injuries. But I think, as you say, the additions that they've made, Billy Sharp looks ready already. Maya Yoshida looks strong in the back, and I think that Will Kuntz has done an incredible job in terms of what he's done in this, and I credit him because I don't know who else in the organization would be making these type of decisions. I believe Will Kuntz should be their GM already, but he's come in and through a transfer ban brought in Fagundes, brought in Yoshida on a free, Sharp on a free, Cerrillo, Alfaro for like $200K and $125K, cheap money, and then sold Efra Alvarez for $2.2 million.
Crazy.
Which is just like, how do you possibly get that type of money for a player who's about to be out of contract, right? That is incredible business. So I think what he's done is fantastic, and I think it's definitely helped LA Galaxy. The locker room seems rejuvenated, ready to fight for playoffs, and no, it's not out of the question. Obviously they would have liked to get 3 points last night with 10 men St. Louis that they had for about 30 minutes. That was a real big opportunity. They were able to get the draw, aided by a very, very questionable penalty call, I may say, handball penalty call, but it's still in that playoff race, as you say, 4 points out. So that's why, to me, this El Tráfico is just going to be so important because, yes, LAFC need those points as we just talked about, but LA Galaxy need them just as much, if not more.
Yeah, and they need them more. And I think also to this LA Galaxy team is like there's a couple times when you feel like, oh yeah, even though they're not good, they're not as good. There's certain times like last year or start of this year, LAFC was more intimidating, right? Because how they were flowing. Now, like LAFC does not like. Not saying they ever like struck fear like in opponents, but there was times like, oh man, I don't know how this is gonna go. And this one's like more like LAFC's like going like because of the downward trend. It's like they seem a little bit more what's the word like the possibility of it. Yeah, the possibility of LAFC getting beat is very very likely. Like teams can feel it, right? And the LA Galaxy team could definitely feel it. And that's why I feel like I wouldn't be surprised. And I would kind of lean on them a little bit more this week and for them to get the win because there's just so many things going wrong with LAFC on their own end. And there's things right now the the LA Galaxy are looking like they're the team that are flowing. They're the team that are ready for the playoffs. Even though they're towards the bottom, they're the teams that have this momentum. And then LAFC doesn't look like they got it. They're the ones that should be having the momentum. They're the ones that should be making these moves and getting all these signings and all these different things. And like unfortunately, some of the signings that they've had as of right now hasn't been able to help the team. And I think the signings that the Galaxy has done has made their team better, has helped them out. It's going to give them that chance to see if they can make the playoffs and all these different things. And that's why for me, I'm not going to be surprised if Galaxy get the win this Saturday.
Yeah, no, I think you make a lot of great points there. And going back to your original point, because I think it was a great one, is that in the beginning of the season, LAFC kind of had this aura about them where they went into places and it was like, yeah, they're going to get 3 points. You better bring out your very best. Otherwise, you're not walking out of there with a point, right? And it just doesn't feel that way anymore. And the other side of it, which I'll add on to your point, is that Ricky Puig, he shows up in these type of games, man. Like
every single time.
And to me, it's like, Ricky Puig can have his criticism for not being consistent enough. This is why I think European teams are not coming in for him, because he's very talented. He's obviously, incredibly one of the most talented players in the league, in my opinion, but he doesn't show up consistently in the whatever games he does what he wants. In the big games, Ricky Puig says, okay, I'm here to play. He knows when the cameras are on, right? And he showed that in the Rose Bowl. He shows that consistently. Whenever Ricky Pouge believes it's a big game, Ricky Pouge is going to drop a 10 out of 10 performance, and that to me is makes him a big game player, which is exactly what this is going to be, obviously. So
Well, I was gonna say just to add and kind of just go a little bit back on that. Just like I feel like in the last four games, he's had at least one goal in the
mhm.
last four games. So Ricky Pouge is kind of rolling right now. And then just to add on, I expect Ricky Pouge to have a goal, an assist, or a goal contribution in this game. He loves these games. He shows up to these games, and then like I enjoy watching big time players make big time moments in big time games. And like the way he scored after all the criticism, even we talked about him like, hey, can you do it against the first team? He did it in the first team against 82,000 plus. You know,
Mm.
he's motivated. He's going to want to beat LAFC in this one. And, you know, I expect to see Ricky Pooch be motivated, be excited, and try to get under the skin of LAFC fans, because the last time LAFC fans saw him at BMO Stadium was when he took off his shirt, right? Now he's coming back. That was at the U.S. Open Cup. Now he's coming back, and he's going to come back to BMO Stadium. Look, he's already to us, he's already proved that he is the guy in these big time games, right? But I think just to be back at BMO Stadium and be in front of the fans, you know, in enemy territory, it's gonna be an exciting matchup.
No, but it's a great point you make. 4 goals in his last 5, because it's saying Ricky Pouge is motivated to make playoffs. He sees that line and he says, "Well, I can go do that. I can make it happen for my team." And that's what he's looking like as of recently. And it only gets bigger in El Trafico, right? It's only going to be amplified. So, yeah, as you say, I expect a big game out of Ricky Pouge.
Yeah, no, I do too. It's gonna be a good one. And like I said at the start of the show, these games rarely disappoint.
Denny Bouanga is going to be ready too, though. By the way, he's going to be very eager to score some goals, because they made him fly all the way to the Gabon qualifier to play 10 minutes and fly all the way back to LA. So he's going to be ready and ramped up to go.
Yeah, we're gonna see. Yeah, well, hopefully they flow this weekend, because they need him and Vela flowing. But if they don't,
And
you know,
Mario.
I don't know about Mario just yet. Mario just yet. It's not looking like the guy. Unfortunately, he's gonna take him
Yeah,
some more time.
yeah, definitely got to give him some time, but yeah, doesn't look like he's connecting yet. Hopefully in the future it'll develop, but yeah, not great signs so far.
Yeah. Well, all right, guys, we'll see what happens this weekend. It's be a very exciting game. And if you get an opportunity to, definitely come out to the game. If you haven't been to one this year, this is the game to do it. Man, these games rarely disappoint. The emotion's going to be there. It's on a Saturday. What more do you want? You know, Saturday night, you know, watching some footy, LAC versus LA Galaxy. So with that, guys, that wraps things up for Justin.